Plymouth at just 3 degrees Celsius this morning, colder than Aberdeen at 5. That is not a typo. The southwest is actually experiencing temperatures you'd expect to find in the Scottish Highlands, and what is coming next could turn this pattern completely on its head. Is your area about to face the most significant temperature swing we've seen this winter? Right now, the Met Office has yellow warnings in place for ice across 17 counties, affecting nearly 12 million people across England and Wales. But within the next 72 hours, we could see a complete reversal that LL have implications for your weekend plans, your Monday commute, and potentially your half-term holiday preparations. I am going to give you specific timings for your region in just a moment, but first, drop your city or county in the comments right now. Tomorrow's forecast will include personalized updates for the areas UV mentioned, because the models are showing some fascinating regional differences that you need to know about. Right then, let us get straight to what you need to know for your specific location. London, you are currently sitting at 4 degrees, tomorrow climbing to 8. But by the weekend, we are looking at 11, possibly 12 degrees Celsius. Manchester, rather different story for you. 5 degrees today, 7 tomorrow. Weekend temperatures struggling to reach 9. For those of you in Birmingham, you are looking at 6 degrees through to Friday, then a notable jump to 10 by Saturday afternoon. Edinburgh, currently at 5 degrees, tomorrow similar, but here is what is interesting for Scotland's capital. You could actually see temperatures dropping back to 3 degrees by Sunday as colder air tries to push back in from the north. Glasgow at 4 degrees today, Cardiff sitting at 6, and Belfast, you are at 5 degrees this morning with rain arriving around 6 o'clock this evening. Now, here's where it gets rather complicated, and this is why you'll want to check back tomorrow, because the Met Office model and the European model are currently showing two quite different scenarios for the second half of next week. The Met Office unified model is suggesting a low-pressure system tracking across southern England from Sunday night into Monday, bringing significant rainfall, possibly 50 to 75 millimeters across the southeast. But the ECMWF model, the European one, is positioning that same low-pressure system about 80 kilometres further south, which would mean the heaviest rain stays across northern France, with southern England seeing much lighter precipitation. This 80-kilometre difference changes everything for Kent, Sussex, Surrey and Hampshire. If the Met Office model is correct, you're looking at potential flooding concerns. If the European model wins out, you will see scattered showers at worst. Tomorrow morning model runs should clarify this, so do check back. Let me just clarify something about what we are seeing in the Atlantic right now. There is a rather vigorous area of low pressure, currently 972 millibars, sitting west of Ireland. This system is going to track northeastwards over the next 48 hours. And it's the interaction between this low and the blocking high pressure over Scandinavia that's creating all the uncertainty for next week. The jet stream is currently positioned unusually far south, running almost directly across central England, and that's why we are seeing such a sharp temperature contrast between northern and southern regions. For Brighton and the south coast, temperatures this afternoon could reach 9 degrees, whilst Newcastle and the northeast, you're unlikely to get above 4 degrees. That is a 5-degree difference across just 500 kilometres, which is quite remarkable for early February. Southampton, you were looking at mild conditions through the weekend, 8 to 10 degrees. Leeds and Sheffield, rather colder for you, 5 to 7 degrees, with a brisk northeasterly wind making it feel closer to freezing at times. Liverpool, you are somewhere in the middle, 7 degrees today, 8 tomorrow, back down to 6 by Sunday as that colder air I mentioned tries to reassert itself. Now, there's one detail that concerns me most about the forecast for next week, and I'll come back to this at around the 12-minute mark, but it involves a potential scenario that could bring some disruption to parts of Scotland and northern England. Not saying any more just yet. Bristol, you are at 7 degrees today, Nottingham at 5, Cambridge at 4 degrees this morning with some stubborn fog that's taking until nearly 11 o'clock to clear. Oxford, similar story for you, fog this morning, temperatures around 4 degrees, climbing to 7 by this afternoon. Leicester, you are looking at 6 degrees through the next few days. For those of you in York, temperatures holding steady at 5 degrees, but the wind chill is making it feel considerably colder, closer to 0 degrees when you factor in that northeasterly breeze. Exeter in the southwest, you've got the coldest start, but actually you'll warm up quite nicely this afternoon to around 8 degrees. Inverness and the Scottish Highlands, you are at 2 degrees this morning, and here S, where it gets interesting for you. There is some uncertainty about whether you will see any snow over the next week. The GFS model, that S, the American model, is showing a cold front bringing snow showers from Thursday night, potentially 5 to 10 centimeters above 300 meters. And this is important, the Met Office model isn't entirely convinced. It S, showing the precipitation arriving slightly later and possibly falling as rain at lower levels, with snow confined to above 400 meters. Aberdeen, you are at 5 degrees, warmer than Plymouth, as I mentioned, which really is rather unusual. Traditionally, we'd expect the opposite. This temperature inversion is caused by the southerly airflow we've got at the moment, which is bringing milder air from the continent to Scotland, whilst the southwest is stuck under this pool of cold air that is not shifting. Let me actually correct something I said earlier about Birmingham. I mentioned 10 degrees by Saturday, but looking at the latest model run, it could actually push to 11 degrees if we get any sunshine breaking through. That SS assuming the cloud breaks, which the Met Office ensemble is suggesting has about a 60% probability. Dover and the southeast coast, you are at 6 degrees, Blackpool on the west coast at 7 degrees. Both of you looking at increased wind speeds from Friday onwards, potentially 60 to 70 kilometers per hour, which will make it feel several degrees colder than the actual temperature suggests. Scarborough, similar wind concerns for you on the east coast. Penzance and Cornwall, you are at 3 degrees this morning, coldest in the country, but you are warm to 7 degrees this afternoon. The Channel Islands, Guernsey and Jersey, you are sitting at 8 degrees, actually the mildest spot in the British Isles this morning, which makes sense given your southerly location. Swansea and West Wales, 7 degrees today. Bangor in North Wales at 5 degrees. Derry in Northern Ireland at 4 degrees, slightly colder than Belfast. And for the Scottish Islands, the Hebrides are at 6 degrees, Orkney at 5, and Shetland, you are at 4 degrees, with some rather blustery conditions, winds gusting to 80 kilometers per hour at times. The Isle of Wight is sitting at 7 degrees, remarkably mild for early February. Now, we are about 3 minutes in, so just a quick reminder, if you haven't already dropped your location in the comments, please do so now. I genuinely want to make sure tomorrow's forecast addresses your specific area, because as you are hearing, there are significant regional variations in what is coming over the next week. Right, let us talk about what is happening beyond this weekend, because this is where the forecast becomes particularly interesting. We've got 3 distinct scenarios emerging from the various computer models, and understanding the differences between them is crucial for planning your week ahead. Scenario 1, this is what the Met Office ensemble mean is favouring, suggests we'll see low pressure dominating from Sunday night onwards, tracking from the southwest across England and Wales. This would bring widespread rain, mild temperatures 10 to 13 degrees across most of England and Wales, colder in Scotland at 6 to 8 degrees. Wind would be the main concern, particularly for southern and western coasts, with gusts potentially reaching 90 to 100 kilometers per hour in exposed locations. Scenario 2, this is what roughly 30% of the ECMWF ensemble members are showing, indicates a blocking high pressure could establish itself over the UK from Tuesday onwards. This would bring settled conditions, light winds, but also a risk of anticyclonic gloom, that characteristic grey, murky weather we often get under high pressure in winter. Temperatures would be close to average for early February, 5 to 8 degrees, but feeling rather raw under the persistent cloud. Scenario 3, and this is the outlier scenario that only about 15% of model runs are suggesting, shows a much colder pattern establishing from midweek onwards, with an easterly flow bringing continental air across the UK. This would mean temperatures struggling to get above 3 to 5 degrees with a significant wind chill. There is even a suggestion of some wintry precipitation, though at this range, 7 days out, that is highly speculative. The models are wobbling quite a bit at this range, which is perfectly normal for early February when we in this transition period between winter and spring. The jet stream positioning is the key to which scenario unfolds, and currently there is about a 200-kilometre spread in where different models position the jet stream by Tuesday of next week. Preston at 7 degrees, Bournemouth at 8 degrees, Reading at 6 degrees. The Midlands generally sitting in this transition zone between the milder south and colder north. East Anglia at 5 degrees with some early fog, whilst the Humber region remains rather cloudy through the next couple of days. Scotland's central belt looking fairly settled through Friday before rain spreads north over the weekend. Now, let me talk about something that nobody is really discussing yet, and this relates to the beginning of next week. There is a developing weather system in the North Atlantic, currently about 1,500 kilometers west of Ireland, that has the potential to undergo what meteorologists call explosive cyclogenesis, or a weather bomb as the media often calls it. This is when a low-pressure system deepens by at least 24 millibars in 24 hours. If this system does bomb out, and the current pressure gradient suggests it might, we could be looking at a very significant weather event for parts of the UK from Monday night into Tuesday. I am not saying this to alarm anyone, but it is something to be aware of. The current track has it moving north of Scotland, which would mean the worst of the weather would affect the Northern Isles and far north of Scotland, with the rest of the UK seeing strong winds and heavy rain, but nothing exceptional. However, and this is crucial, if that track shifts just 100 kilometers further south, and some model runs are suggesting it might, then we are looking at potential amber warnings for wind across much of Scotland, Northern England, and Northern Ireland. We're talking wind gusts that could reach 100 to 120 kilometers per hour in exposed locations. Tomorrow's forecast will have much better clarity on this because we'll have the overnight model runs to analyze. This is exactly the type of situation where you need to check back daily because small changes in the forecast track make enormous differences to who gets affected and how severely. Wrexham at 5 degrees, Carlisle at 4 degrees with scattered showers developing. The northwest generally between 4 and 6 degrees, whilst the area north of London sits uniformly at 5 degrees in that persistent cold pool. The commuter belt around London running a degree or two milder this morning. The Welsh Marches and West Midlands conurbation all hovering around 5 to 6 degrees. Burnley at 4 degrees, Bolton at 6 degrees, Chester at 6 degrees. The Thames Estuary region uniformly in the mid-single figures. South Devon warmer at 7 degrees compared to Plymouth S3, showing how localised the southwest cold pool is. The northeast uniformly cold at 4 to 5 degrees with that persistent northeasterly wind. The Black Country at 6 degrees throughout. Cornwall between 3 and 4 degrees despite the relatively mild Atlantic waters. So let me bring this together. Today through Friday, we've got this split pattern, milder south and west, colder north and east. The weekend brings a general warming trend as southerly winds pick up. Sunday night into Monday sees the next significant weather system with rain spreading northeast. The uncertainty for next week centers around whether we get stuck in a wet, windy westerly pattern, whether high pressure builds, bringing settled conditions, or whether colder air manages to push in from the east. I know forecasts can seem frustratingly uncertain, and I appreciate you like more concrete answers about next week. The reality is we're in a very dynamic atmospheric pattern. The jet stream is unusually variable, we've got competing air masses, and small pressure changes create large forecast uncertainties. What I can tell you with confidence is that by tomorrow evening, we'll have much better clarity on that potential weather system for early next week. The overnight model runs will significantly narrow down the possibilities. And here's something specific for tomorrow's forecast. We'll be looking at an interesting interaction between a cold front and relatively warm sea temperatures, which could produce intense but brief precipitation next week. I'll have exact timing and locations tomorrow. The long-range signals for the second half of February show a potential pattern change around the 18th or 19th. This is based on stratospheric observations showing a weakening polar vortex, which can sometimes lead to colder spells at the surface. It is too early for anything definitive, but it's something I am monitoring closely. For tonight, most areas will see clear spells developing, meaning widespread frost, particularly across central and northern England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Temperatures could dip to -2 or -3 degrees in rural areas, with sheltered Scottish glens possibly reaching -5. Southern coastal areas will stay just above freezing. Tomorrow brings similar conditions to today for most areas, though perhaps a degree or two milder generally. Cloud will be increasing from the west through the day, and that is the first sign of the approaching weather system for the weekend. I'll be back tomorrow at the usual time with a full update, including much more clarity on that early week weather system, specific timings for the rain and wind, and an update on those long-range signals for later in the month. Thank you for watching, for your comments, and for being part of this community. Weather forecasting might not always give us the answers we want exactly when we want them, but I promise to always give you the most honest, accurate assessment I can based on the available data.